Greetings, citizen. Welcome to the show, and thank you for listening. For more of the art of wargaming in your life, definitely check us out on Instagram and Facebook. If you'd like to support the show, we have a Patreon account where you can do just that for as little as $1 a month. What we can offer will expand as the show does. If you don't have extra funds but would still like to help us out, you can give us a like, share, or 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Want to get in touch? Feel free to message us or hit up our email, artofwargamingpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you because we know the world is vast, with many different ideas on tactics and strategy that can be applied to the games we enjoy.
You're listening to the Art of Wargaming on the Ear Firm Network.
Belegarth History regarding 2 Western empires.
Welcome to the Art of Wargaming on the Ear Verm Network. I am Yaga Malark.
And I'm Thumbs.
And we are here today to talk to you about 2 Western empires within the sport of Belegarth. But before we do, a few things on the personal note. I am absolutely geeking out about the most recent construction that I did in Fallout. Now, any of you who have played Fallout 76 know that within it you can construct your own base, and I have constructed a 3-floor monstrosity with pill boxes built into the middle of it with turret coverage at all angles, and it's smack dab in the middle of the Cranberry Bog, and I feel pretty okay about that. That's one of the, for those of you who don't play, that's like one of the higher level zones, and it does just fine. My base does just fine. So,
having never played 76 myself, when you have to set up a base, do you just have to worry about defenses, or do you need to worry about, like, food and stuff like that, too? Or...
That's a good question. Within the base, you can do just about anything you want. Like, you can grow food if you want to. Like, food is a fairly active component of the game, so having some in your base that you can just have is a good idea. I typically have a small farm at my base. I've got a chicken coop that I can harvest fertilizer from. Now, I use the fertilizer to make missiles, but it's also very useful for that. Water, you can set up water purifiers. Again, clean water is a hard thing to find in a nuclear wasteland, so I've got a bunch of water purifiers there. And then I've got one room completely dedicated to musical instruments. Got like a banjo, a slide guitar, a piano, all sorts of good stuff.
I'm glad to see that, because sometimes I'll look at these, like, bases that people have... And I don't play these games, so I'm not throwing shade, really. But, like, I'll see these bases that people design, and they're like, it's perfect! I'm like, you would die in a week in that. And
yeah.
Not from, like, people attacking, because, oh, sure, those laser turrets are perfectly set up. But, like, where's the well?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool survival stuff to this that they definitely take into account. Now, some people just set up their base and they're raiders. Like, you can definitely be a raider or a settler in this game, and a little bit of both if you want. I tend to fare way more towards the settler side, because I like being able to, again, grow my own food, which is, again, pretty important to me. Now, some people just go out and raid it, take it from other folks, and that is fine, but I like the dependability of having it right on hand at my base.
No, my gripe is entirely just I have read too many war treatises or listened to too many history podcasts or all of the stuff that we do.
Right. But yeah, come visit me in the Cranberry Bog if you're ever on with me at the same time. Yeah. And you were talking about some cool reference that you had heard in Doctor Strange.
This is an example. I mean, we know I know nothing about 40K other than generally what I have learned in this podcast. So it's a sign of how much this podcast has really kind of, like, filtered in, is I had to watch the Doctor Strange movie for a different podcast I'm doing, and there's a point where Stephen is being given a bunch of new books to study for magic and stuff.
Okay.
And one of the books that he is given is the Codex Imperium.
Ooh. Very nice. Very nice.
And I was like, well, there's only one thing that is, but also, I don't feel like the Imperium would like being included in a study session about how to do magic.
No, for sure. Outside of a very small subsection of the Imperium that is allowed to practice any sort of psychic ability or magical ability, it's very much frowned upon. Psychers are mutants within the 40K universe, and so the idea of the Codex Imperium being studied by somebody who was, by their regards, a heretic...
Oh, 100% heresy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still amusing. Still very amusing.
It's one of those things that the more you get involved with stuff like 40K, the bigger you realize it is without knowing it because of places that they'll slip things into.
Oh yeah, I mean 40K has been around forever at this. It's as old as I am. Oh man, I just called myself old.
Right? And I mean, this was a major motion picture. It made hundreds of millions of dollars, and they just slid that in right there. Like, good for them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. Speaking of Warhammer 40K, though, there is this app that is out. This like the official Warhammer 40K. I think it's called Battleforged app, and it's super convenient. You can put all your codexes in there. There's a little code, and you have access to all your codexes on there. It's got a section where you can build a Battleforged army. It's got all the warlord traits and relics and all that sort of thing. So it's actually a really solid app that I think it's Games Workshop. They did it directly. It came out. So, I mean, the updates are going to be right there. It's like I used to use Battlescribe, and like Battlescribe is nice, but in the same token, you have to wait for a really long time occasionally for those updates to come. The nice thing about this one is that, from all appearances, the updates are going to be immediate. I mean, any FAQ, any sort of alteration to the rules, you're going to know about it right there. So that's convenient.
That's pretty game changing for 40K.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm enjoying it. Obviously, I'm not doing too much with list building because I haven't played in quite a while, but I am looking forward to using it to its full extent.
How many lists have you built over the last year of quarantine? I'm just curious.
Good God. I couldn't tell you. I could not give you that number because it's been many.
Because I saw on like one of the confessions posts of like, oh man, I'm thinking about building a new kit for myself, even though I just made a new kit at the beginning of quarantine. I'm like, oh, you sweet summer child.
Right.
I have made so many kits for myself and for other people in this last year because like, if it's wargaming, if you can't fight, all that's left to do is the other stuff, and there's a bunch of other stuff, but that means super focused on certain things.
And for me, apparently that means selling off a few of my armies and buying new ones, and then just looking at the boxes. Folks, I have never had a pile of shame before, which I believe is what you call a pile of unbuilt models, but at the moment I do. I've basically purchased a sizable and functional Gene Stealer force, but have absolutely no motivation to put it together at the moment.
Do not feel bad. I am my art room in the new house isn't set up yet, so I am just in this little like nook with all of my art stuff, and I am literally surrounded by my unfinished armor wall of shame, like pile of shame.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one, and I'm sure out there our listeners are kind of feeling the same thing. So just know you're not alone. It's been a strange year for anything along our what we enjoy, this wargaming stuff. So tough it out. We'll be doing the stuff we love before too long.
We'll all get through this together.
Mm-hmm. Now, a few episodes ago, we had mentioned that Thumbs was going to be taking a small sabbatical in order to work on some of his other projects. Now, we intend on having Thumbs back on for various interviews and for the battles and such. But Thumbs, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the projects that you're going to be working on?
Yeah, I've had a couple of projects, almost all of them with my buddy Tyler, who is one of the other founders of the Earworm Network, because we started our podcast, General Nerdery, around the same time Art of Wargaming started, and we really quickly realized that we had too many bits, too many things that we wanted to be able to do with the podcast to fit. So now we have 3 podcasts. And just all of them are nerd related, but this lets them be a little more focused.
And not quite so all over the place.
Yes, also it keeps them from being 4 hours long.
We know all about that.
Yes, same here. First off, we have General Nerdery, which has been around forever, which is literally just general nerdery stuff. I mean, we have episodes on anime or video games or comic books and movies and TV shows are kind of our most common ones. We will talk about what we have been ingesting. We will talk about... like we just did one on King Kong last week.
Nice.
Great. I had so much fun with it, because I got to watch Kong Skull Island, which if you haven't seen is a great popcorn movie. and talk about things that we enjoy about it, talk about things that we don't enjoy about it. We did an episode on Your Fave is Problematic, and we've been talking about doing another one of those, which is just, how do you deal with finding out that someone who made something you really like might not be the best person.
H.P. Lovecraft. That would be H.P. Lovecraft for me.
H.P. Lovecraft came up a lot in that one, because Tyler is Latino and is a big H.P. Lovecraft fan. So, all of that.
For sure.
We also have Word Balloons, which is just a short joking around podcast where we'll discuss weird nerd questions. One of the questions coming up this season is, who would win in a fight, the Goblin King or the Goblin King? Because someone got into a conversation with me of different people who have dubbed themselves the Goblin King, and that includes the Spider-Man villain Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin,
Right.
and also Jareth, the David Bowie character from Labyrinth.
Well, also, there's the Goblin King from underneath the Misty Mountains. Did you forget about him?
And then there's the Errol King, who is basically the, king of the wild goblins of the Fae from various mythological things. So there's a whole bunch of Goblin Kings that we're going to have to decide between.
Nice.
And just short, fun questions. Those podcasts end out at about 15 minutes long.
Oh, right on.
At the long end. So it's a nice, listen while you drive podcast, which I always enjoy those.
Short and sweet. Yeah.
And then, as I said, because we're crazy people, and we started doing bi-weekly and just swapping at which one we do each week, we are launching one called Noob Island, which I have mentioned here before, which is, the first season is a deep dive into the world of magic in the Marvel Universe. So, for example, we have an episode coming up on vampires, because there's this huge vampire, lore and culture in Marvel. And we discuss, the comics that it came from and how it works. What is the rules for being a vampire in Marvel versus being...
Let me at 'em.
Yes, exactly. With the next episode is an episode on vampire hunters, so that's the one to spell for you.
Ooh.
Right? So, really, if you have any interest in nerd stuff, this is really just shameless plug. Earworm has all sorts of stuff for you. We would love to hear from you. We would love for you to hear us. Everything. All of the above. If there's something you're interested in, we probably have it. And if not, we're probably looking into ways to get it.
That's nice to be a part of a rapidly expanding network. It gives me all sorts of stuff to talk about, so...
It's been really interesting trying to be an expanding network in the age of COVID. But in some ways it worked out because it let us, we had early expansion plans and we had to kind of stop and be like, all right, we can't expand too much because just literally with COVID, there's only so much we can do, even meeting up to discuss things. So it just forced us to spend time doing stuff like Art of Wargaming or General Nerdery or Fried Squirms, which is a podcast that I'm not on, and forcing us to get better at our craft before we expanded.
Yeah. No, I've definitely, there's been a lot of things about this pandemic that I have not enjoyed. For instance, not getting to do wargaming, not cool. But the ability to just kind of dive into my books has been very nice.
Oh, I have read so much this last year, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we wish you luck on those endeavors, Thumbs, and we absolutely look forward to having you back to discuss some of the stuff we're talking about and to do some battles with us.
I'm so excited. The battles has always been... It's openly always been my favorite part of doing this podcast, so doing more of them is just...
Who doesn't love battles? That's I think there's a lot of folks who can relate to you on that one.
Mostly the people in them don't love them, but everyone else thinks they're pretty swell.
That's a good point. That's an awfully good point. But yeah, I think we've yucked about for long enough. It's time to get into this episode regarding 2 Western empires, and the first of those empires we will be discussing is Pike.
So I hate to start this with a, well, actually, but the empire, this first empire we're talking about is not actually the Pike Empire, but Pike is part of an empire of the Babylonian Empire.
Yes.
Which is confusing if you do not play Belegarth. We will get into this as we get a little deeper into this. But Pike is a a pretty fun empire, or not empire, I did it there, that's on me. Pike is a pretty fun realm that I've known and liked a lot of people from it for a while, so it was actually kind of fun to learn much more about it. Malark talks directly to the people, so he will be answering most of our questions for this section.
And I got the majority of my answers from Dyer. Hi, Dyer.
Hi, Dyer. Who is both Gelf and Pikean?
Yeah, so she's going to come up quite a bit in this episode.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how, like, for Stygia, it's Stygian. How would it... what would you call someone from Pike? I guess Pikean?
Lord, I don't even know. That was
Piker?
That was one question I didn't ask.
It's okay. I didn't even think about it till right now, so sorry for this.
Pikey? No, not that.
No, I feel like this is too close to uncomfortable phrases that I don't know what they mean. First off, when was this realm founded?
Well, this time actually is a rather surprise to me because I had the impression that Pike was a fairly old realm because of the number of good fighters they command. But actually, they're only about 11 years old. They were founded back in 2010.
Now, I'm curious, and we didn't ask this question, of if fighters who were already active in Belegarth then went on to found Pike? Or one of those realms that founded from just, like, popping up out of nowhere and then joining Belegarth. I'm always curious, and we should add that question, I think, in the future.
Might not be a bad idea, because that wasn't one I specifically asked, so I don't want to, like, take a stab at that and be wrong and have everybody from Pike listening and be like, he got that completely wrong. That dummy.
No, we definitely already hear anytime we make a mistake. And we love you for doing that, dear listener audience. Like, we definitely want to correct ourselves when we are mistaken.
This show is all about academic accountability.
Uh-huh. Where is this realm located?
I think we already mentioned, but it's out of Portland, Oregon.
This is a pretty heavy... It's a pretty heavy Belegarth port of call, I guess.
Yeah, the area boasts quite a few realms, both north, south, and east. Not so much west because you have the ocean there.
Yeah, it's a little hard. I mean, I guess Atlantis, but...
But in the other three cardinal directions, you actually have a very thriving scene for Belegarth. So Pike is very nicely situated kind of between all that. Yeah.
How many people, fighters and non-combatants and just people in general, are in the realm? And what's the average field size?
Well, Pike has between 30 and 40 members at any given time, but the average field size is only 5 to 10. And again, this was information that very much surprised me because, again, the number of quality fighters they produce, I expected them to be much larger of the scale of Dirtamarion, but they're small. They're about our size.
We tend to have a larger average field presence than this. 10 is a relatively small day for us.
Now, that being said, from my understanding, a lot of the Pike folks live in like larger households where you have multiple fighters living in households, and so I imagine that a lot of them are getting practice there at home.
As you and I have talked about, living in a fighter house definitely means that fighting becomes a pretty dominant thing in your life. And I'm definitely not knocking Pike on the smaller size. Generally, you see a wider variety of skill level. It seems like everyone I meet who comes from Pike who fights is, worst case, sitting in the, like, solid mid-upper level of the, like, mid-tier skill level of fighters in Belegram.
Right.
And when that's your lowest case, you are doing quite well as a realm.
Absolutely, and that's mostly down to the pluck and the determination of the members. But like we said, these fighter households definitely contribute to that. I saw a massive explosion in the Stygian skill when there were like two big fighter households that were kind of in the valley. There was ours at the door place, and we had 6 of us living there. And then
like 4 or 5 people just around all the time.
Yeah, and then the Juniper and Sumatai house, they had several people that were boarding there as well. So they had a community of folks that were fighting there, and we had a community of folks that were fighting just down the street. And so in both of those places, you saw a massive increase in skill just because the amount of practice that you're able to do.
Oh, definitely. I should also say real quick, because anytime I'm like, oh, someone's at a mid-tier level, I worry that I sound like I'm being insulting. I am best case mid-tier level, so I am definitely not insulting by saying trying to insult by saying that someone is at that skill level.
Word. Yeah, it's not a dismissive thing. It's a compliment, especially in this case, because most realms have like a pyramid almost, where you've got a majority of the realm that is okay. You know, they're decent, but not anything necessarily to write home about. Not to knock y'all, but you know, there's definitely skill levels. And then you have a smaller portion of the realm that is, you know, they're pretty darn good. They're pretty well sought after. And then there's like a creme de la creme at the top. You know, you have, you know, 3 or 4 people that are exemplars of that community. Whereas Pike, it's the whole realm.
They're all just there. Yeah, they all are very impressed when I learned this.
Yeah, yeah. So again, as throughout the course of researching this, I just became. I already thought Pike was a very impressive realm, and the more I know about it, the more I'm like, wow, these guys are cool.
So, thinking of all of these cool people, who are some of the prominent members of the realm?
The first one we need to discuss is Bear. Mm-hmm. This is a cool guy.
He is one of the sweetest men I have ever met in my life.
When you want to talk about like boosting up camp morale, Bear's the one to do it.
More than once, Bear has been the first person to greet me at an event, and it is just, like, I like Bear. I've known him for years now. He's a real solid fighter, but the first thing I think of is pulling myself out of a car. I've been stuck there for hours. I don't smell very good at that point. And just him just popping up and just immediately, like, the kindest, gentlest hug of, like, I'm so glad you're here.
Just has a calming smile, very gentle way about him. Yeah, he's a good present. Now, absolute firebrand on the field too. Do not let that cuddly exterior trick you, because he's a force.
That man can stab with a spear like nobody's business. I am always so impressed.
Yeah, no, Bear's absolutely fantastic. The next one we have to speak of is Fish, another highly decorated member of the realm, who is also another extreme positive influence on the community.
Yeah, I mean, everyone we talk about here are people we like, so we are definitely heaping it on. But Fish is another one of those just... even though he can just tar my hide up and down the field, the first thing I think about him is... Well, honestly, the first thing I think about him is when he grows a mustache, he grows it better than anyone else.
Oh, yeah.
But, just one of the most, like, gentle and kind people. He's one of those people that when he tells me he's glad to see me, I have never once doubted him.
One of the few people that can absolutely wreck me in a fight, and I feel better about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, he's got kind of a Paksha in that. He's like, you're doing great, man. And you're like, Fish, please stop telling me that until after the fight, at least. Like,
you're kicking my butt right now, man. Yeah, Fish is fun. Our next fighter to talk about is Wadu. And she is another one of those kind of unassuming folks that will just light you up. One of my first encounters with Wadu was in a sword and board tournament. And I had never met her before. I'm not even sure how long she'd been around. But of course, I made the biggest mistake you can make in war or wargaming, which is underestimating your opponent.
Ooh, don't do that.
Oh, yeah. This particular tournament was the kind of the best of 3, and she beat me twice. I did not stand a chance, because the first time she just completely destroyed me, and then the second round, I was still just dazed from that first beating, and did not put up a very good fight. I was amorous afterwards. I was like, you are awesome, and I'm going to follow your career, because this is exciting. But yeah, I did not expect that.
This goddess of a woman is so gentle until it is time to hit you, and then you can watch her face, like, solidify, and you have a moment of, like, wait, what?
Oh, she has great war face.
Oh, man. There's a picture of her with some murder mask, and I think a flail, because her flail game is pretty strong, if I remember properly.
Oh, yeah.
And that look, and just this, like, absolute fire look, and I'm like, oh my god, that is kind of who I aspire to be in life in some respects. Like,
she's got the warrior soul, no doubt.
Uh-huh.
No doubt. Our next fighter, I have to admit a bit of favoritism for. Dyer is one of my absolute favorite people in the world. Hands down, I just adore this girl. Out of Belegarth, of course, and also within Belegarth, because she has been one of the most motivated people I've ever seen. She is constantly involved anywhere she is. Like she is volunteering her time and contributing to the effort. And not just that, she is probably one of the best well-traveled Belegrim I've ever met. She's lived in more realms than just about anybody else I can think of.
I'm very hard-pressed to think of someone who has spent more time in diverse areas of Belegarth than Dyer. And, I mean, beyond just us being big fans, she is a gone but not forgotten Stygian. She is, she's Gelf. We are very, very tied into Dyer on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, and we're not just blowing smoke. Again, she is absolutely a chief contributor. I never see her sitting still. Yeah, so she is, and not just that. Let's talk about her fighting ability. That well-traveled, that experience that she's gotten. You know, that's all those lessons from all those different areas and all those different people that have come together into one fighter. I remember the first time I was fighting her, I could not figure out how to fight her, because at that time I was all about the scorpion wrap. I was all about being tall, which I am. I'm 6'3", and reaching over somebody's back and smacking them on the lower back or booty. That was my job. That was the one shot that I was perfect at. And then I met Dyer. And she's considerably shorter.
She doesn't care about your scorpion wrap. She has no concerns for it.
No, she just like tilted her shield back, walked right underneath my shots, and killed me. Like killed me for months until I was like, okay, I need to drop my weight. I need to, find some new shots to throw, because she is just schooling me. Her shield work is fantastic. Tops.
When Dyer moved to Missoula, she permanently changed the meta in Stygia.
Absolutely.
Like, just that alone, I let that be praised to her combat. And I mean, I can never fight her and take it easy, like at all. Like if I'm fighting her, I have to be fighting her. You and I will sometimes have fights where we're there and we're sparring, but we're mostly using it to kind of like talk.
Or warm up or whatever.
Yeah, appreciate each other's company. I always appreciate Dyer's company, but I've never been able to have that kind of lackadaisical fight. If I'm fighting, I'm fighting. Or she will punish me.
Yeah, she's got the wolf spirit there, and if any weakness, she goes for the throat. And I love it. I like, those kind of fighters definitely make it so much fun to be out there. I love that kind of competitive spirit. So, Dyer, we love you. Keep doing what you're doing.
God, we miss you.
Speaking of groundbreaking kind of trend-setting people within Belegarth, our next person to speak about from Pike is Troll. And if you don't know the name Troll, you have not been around in this sport long enough, because he is one of the most influential people when it comes to monster culture, when it comes to monster garb. I mean, heck, there was one Chaos Wars that I won best garb, and I had totally just ripped off his garb. Like I went to Juniper and I was like, make me something that looks like Troll's stuff. I love his patchwork look. It is just so cool with the long hat and everything. I was just completely in love with his look. And I remember he and I were the finalists for that, and they said that I won, and I was just confused. I was like, no, he's the master. What are you doing? Like,
I still love that garb set, the one that you won with, by the way.
I've still got it. It's threadbare as heck right now, but I've still got it. And even just beyond that, he's a very positive force at events. I constantly hear him storytelling. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. Really cool.
And possibly most importantly, he is one of the most moral Belegrim that I have ever met. He is an absolute champion for justice in kind of every level. And he is one of the smartest people I think I have ever met.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so he's not just a credit to Pike, but he's also just a credit to the sport, really. Like, I'm not sure where our culture would be as a community without him, because he's just been so influential. And don't let this downplay his fighting ability, because he's also fierce on the field. Everybody we talk about here, everybody who's a prominent member from Pike, or even just a member of Pike, you can bet that they're a good fighter.
Oh, yeah. All of these people, I'm like, oh, Jesus. Oh, their skill is so high. I know we've covered this, but their skill is so high, Malark.
And speaking of absolute tanks, our next fighter is Bishop. Now, if you've never faced Bishop on the field, you probably have both of your kidneys still in the right place.
I have legit been a little scared of him ever since he hit me in the kidneys.
He's amazing. He's a big guy who swings like a Mack truck, and it's very satisfying.
But it's important to say this. he does it safely.
Oh, sure. Yeah, he's not out of control. He's not hurting people or anything like that. His shots are very planned out. They're not wild. They just have good penetration.
They're not wild, they're just wild.
Yeah, man.
Unfortunately, neither one of us has a whole ton of experience with Bishop. Every experience I've ever had with him has been good. I don't want to, like, understate that, but the rest of these people were like, oh, they're so lovely. I like Bishop, I just have never had that chill experience with him, so it's a little harder for me to talk about him other than he hits like a truck, and he has been just wonderfully kind every experience I've ever had.
Oh yeah, he seems like a very joyful guy, and he's absolutely the party at nightlife. Like he's always out there, giving off positive energy and interacting with people, making sure people feel included. Yeah, he just seems like a swell fella, no doubt.
He's who I think of when I think of God Squad in a lot of ways.
He is kind of like iconic in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. Our next fighter is Acorn. And, of course, we in Stygia love Acorn because she is one of the few people who has actually made the effort to come to our events. So that alone makes her awesome. But in addition to that, she as a person is just awesome. She, again, when you want to talk about a fight, like when I first met her, it was Chaos Wars 9, and she wiped the floor with me, I assumed that she had been around for a long time because she had the determination, the confidence, and the skill of somebody who had been in the sport for quite a long time. I think she had joined like only a year or two before I did. So I was sitting here thinking of her as just this like paragon of experience when, she was just out there kind of at the same experience level I was, just doing a lot more with it.
I will say, going to your first event, especially if you had just been going to practices like casually for a while, and you're like doing okay, but then you talk to someone who just wipes the floor with you, and they're like, oh, this is my first year. And I'm like, oh no. Don't tell me that.
I gotta start lifting weights or something because I feel little.
Acorn is an absolute inspiration to me in Belegarth. From the first time I saw her, which would have been at like Chaos Wars 14, and just watching her wreck the field, to she was immediately so friendly with me. Like, she met me the first event. The next Chaos I was at, I didn't go to an event for a year. She remembers me, she gives me a hug, she talks to me like we're old friends. And that woman's skill off the field as a shield creator is out of this world.
Oh, for sure.
Her Plastidip shield shop stuff, I'm not sure how active she is in it. She had to kind of take a back seat for a while, but anytime she comes out with a look what I made, I have to up my art skill like 4 levels just to even see what she's doing.
For sure. Yeah, and her stuff, I think it's been kind of featured at like a national level. I know that there's all sorts of people that have purchased from her. I know you guys got one for me. I've got a Plastidip shield that is, it's one of my absolute favorite shields. It's got this really cool design that's very me, and it was one of the best birthday presents I've ever got, and it was incredible craft and skillmanship that went into it.
Only reason that I don't have one of my own is because right around when I started making enough money to actually be able to invest in my own gear is right around when life kind of took her away from being able to do it as full time.
Right.
And so I had to start to learn to Plastidip just like to be like, aw. But anytime I'm doing Plastidipping, I am not like comparing myself to her, but she is my she's my gauge. Looking at her being like, that's what I want to be able to do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Also, highly intelligent, highly articulate. Another one like Troll, who is just an absolute, she is a dogged defender of truth and in pursuit of justice. So even in just like who she is as a person, outstanding. Just an outstanding individual.
And her willingness to talk to people she disagrees with, and like she'll absolutely fiercely fight for what she believes in, but her willingness to keep those lines of communication open is, I think, pretty admirable.
She got more patience than I do, that's for sure.
Ooh, both of us together, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, Acorn, awesome. If you ever get a chance to meet her, do so. It'll be a good experience. Our next fighter is well known as well on and off the field, but for something different off the field. He is our own personal rock star, and I'm going to let you pronounce his name because I always mess it up.
Ser.
That's the one, Ser.
Ser is both God Squad and Gelf. He is a fierce fighter. He is a sweet man. He is great at music.
Oh, yes.
He did my first experience. One of my first Chaos Wars experiences was the Dirty Words playing, and it wasn't until years later that I realized who the Dirty Words were and who Ser was.
Mm-hmm.
He's still making music. He has a couple songs that are kind of like on my iconic Belegarth experiences, and one of the songs we can't say the name of on this podcast for swear word reasons, but Heck Idaho, we'll go with that. I have to listen to on my way home from Chaos Wars every year. He is, I believe, a dragoon knighted by Dop. He might just be a normal knight. But I mean, Dop knighting someone, that alone is level enough of like, here's their skills.
Right.
These people deserve it. I watched one of his upper level God Squad trials, and it was fierce. And he kept it up through the whole time. I haven't seen Sarah in a while, and he doesn't do social media much, so I haven't talked to him. But I just love that man.
Yeah, he's cool. And kind of going back to his music stuff, he gave the first concert I ever saw at a Chaos Wars. And up until that point, I had been really on the fence about whether or not I liked electronic music of any sort at events. Before that, the culture had been all hand drums and, you know, pan flutes, didgeridoos, or whatever somebody would bring to the fire. And you'd have this nice little communal drum session. And I was still very married to that idea. And then I went to the Dirty Words concert, and I became far more amicable to the idea of more of that happening, because that...
Like, it turns out that this is awesome.
It was good music. They had great stage, or like crowd interaction. The energy of that place was just amazing. It was one of my best Chaos Wars experiences.
Yeah, I really miss Ser. Like, he's one of those people that if he lets me, he's going to get a very long hug once we're able to do stuff again.
Yeah, he's a nice fella. I think that's entirely deserved. Our next fighter is Slate.
Slate, I'll talk a bit about him here, because I think I know him a bit better than you do.
Yeah, most likely.
He's Gelf. He joined the same year that I did, so we have kept in pretty close contact. I had known Slate for a couple years, but my first real experience interacting with him was his Knight's Trial. And we still joke about this, because the fact that he likes me at all after that is very kind of him.
Yeah?
Because he had to go through this long trial of... he had to go around this, like, square fence space at the Western War site.
Okay.
And the first part, he had to fight a certain number of people, and it was all 2-on-1s. And then the second part was all 3-on-1s, and the fourth part was all 4-on-1s. Or no, it was 4-on-2 at the end. He was able to get, like, allies, but still, he had to prove several levels of fighting. It is one of the best knighting trials I have ever seen. I loved that trial. But my boss, Dio, came up to me, because I was still a squire at that point, and he goes, "Get your hammer." And I'm like, "Oh, that's fun." And we both pulled out our hammers, and he goes, "Okay, so Slate's going to beat us pretty fast here. Our entire goal is to both hit him with a hammer at the same time from both sides." And we were one of the first people he had to fight. And I'm like, "Dio, that's one of the meanest things I've ever heard." And he's like, "Yep, let's do this." And so one of Slate's first experiences with me is Dio and I repositioning his kidneys from both sides.
So just kind of joining them into one organ in the middle?
Uh-huh. And there's video of it, and I have watched that video, and you can see the force hitting from both sides, and he has been one of the kindest people to me ever since. And if that was my first experience with someone, I mean, I know we do a fighting thing, but I'd still have that, like, "Oh God, you."
Just a little bit of resentment.
Yeah, or like a little bit of like, "Oh God," in the prep. But no, he is 100% kind, and he has some of the coolest armor I have ever seen in my life.
You know, suddenly I think... No, I think I do actually know Slate. I'm sorry, Slate. I'm sitting here playing ignorant. You brought up the armor thing, and I'm like, this guy sounds really familiar.
He's got that amazing kind of like Admiral's hat armor.
Yeah, that was...
It is like defining armor for like, in the same way that Acorn is goals, Slate is sort of goals for me. I'm not trying to make the same kind of armor, but anytime I'm making armor, I'm comparing, like, that is a level that I am comparing it against.
Well, not only is he well protected, but he looks good doing it.
Oof.
So yeah, Slate, good guy, amazing artisan. Look forward to seeing you as soon as all this lifts, and you can tell me off for having forgotten you momentarily.
There's so many Belegarth guys.
There are. There's a lot of us. Our next fighter is Vey.
Vey, neither one of us know Vey particularly well, but we have always gotten along with her.
Oh yeah.
She's very friendly to Stygia. Her God Squad name is Blasting Bastet.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that is very appropriate because I have never met someone so obsessed with cats in my life.
I know one or two that might come close, but she is definitely up there.
It is very impressive.
And so is her fighting ability. She's another one of those that'll surprise you because she's so cool off field and just seems so relaxed that when she suddenly springs into this fighter stance and comes at you, it kind of takes you off guard because she's just got this easy way about her.
And we've talked about underestimating. I fought her in one of her earliest events, and and she showed a lot of potential, but I did pretty well against her. She was very new to the sport. I was pretty experienced at that point. And then I saw her at the next event, and I thought I knew what I was ready for.
No.
When the fight came on, and I was not. Her skill level that she jumped was just amazing. Like, she was already good, and then by the time I saw her at the next event, she was great.
And a lot of that, of course, was down to her own individual dedication and internal ferocity, but I have no doubt that being a part of a quality realm like Pike certainly helped that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Vey, fantastic individual. Again, not somebody that we've spent a huge amount of time with, but somebody that we definitely know as awesome.
And someone that I always make sure to track down when I'm at an event that I know she's at as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Our next fighter is, and last fighter that we're going to talk about for this section, is Alexi. And Alexi is one of our premier fighters in the community. He's easily in my top 10 list anytime I'm thinking of like the top fighters. And I mean, he's just this compact like ball of skill because the way he moves and muscle. Oh yeah. You want to see muscle on muscle. Yeah.
He is probably one of the best fighters I've ever seen. I have had almost no social interactions with Alexi. I think he's kind of withdrawn, and I am also pretty withdrawn. So all I can really comment on is, man, that dude can swing stick.
Yeah. And like I've heard through the grapevine, this might be one of those unconfirmed rumors. Perhaps somebody in Pike might correct me on this, but I'm fairly certain that Alexi has trained at like the national level in fencing, I want to say. And if you've ever been stabbed by him, you could definitely get on board with this idea because he's incredibly skilled. His precision and his and the strength.
Precise is exactly the word I was going to use there. So yeah, there is no wasted anything when I see him fight.
And every time I've been hit by him, it was where he wanted. You could tell that there was purpose. You could tell that he had planned it out and that was exactly where he wanted to hit you. There was nothing unpredictable about that swing. You still couldn't block it because it was super fast in a quadrant that you weren't protecting, but man, yeah, great fighter.
So what events does the Realm of Pike put on, and when are they?
So the one event that Pike officially puts on is the Battle of Pike. Now remember we had talked about Dyer being a mover and shaker. She started this about 4 years ago, and it is a monthly event. This is one of the only ones like this that I've ever heard of. A standing monthly event that is kind of designed to bring the various realms of Western Washington and Oregon together under the same kind of tent.
This is a thing that I have seen more in other sports, where they'll do like a big monthly gathering of multiple realms as opposed to smaller individual practices like you and I do as much.
Right.
And it makes it so the event, I don't want to say less special, but less big. You know, it's much more like an oversized practice that might have some food with it.
Right.
As opposed to like Chaos Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But I like a good day event. So if you can get people together for a good day event once a month, that sounds so incredible to me. And if we ever get more events in kind of the local Montana area. I mean, not events, more realms in kind of a local Montana area. I 100% plan on stealing this.
Oh yeah, and it's a great idea. I know that in the East they do something a little bit like this. For instance, Sage Hill and Dur Marion will do invasions of each other, where one day they're like, okay, Dur Marion invades Sage Hill, and really what that means is Dur Marion goes to Sage Hill practice, and then some other time Sage Hill will invade Dur Marion and we'll go to Dur Marion practice, and so and that's not the only two. A lot of the different realms in that area participate in this kind of idea, and it's really cool. Again, we're so isolated where we are in Montana that it's not really possible for us conceivably to do that, but it's a really cool idea. So if we get people in Helena or Kalispell and that sort of thing and can travel to each other, heck yeah.
Yeah, and if you are not living our life, which most Bellegrim aren't, and we get to a point where you can go out again, do this. Go to other realms, learn other things.
It's huge.
I mean, every realm, even close by realms, have different metas. So the more you can learn, the more useful you will be anywhere you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's the history of the realm? Are there any great tales of past deeds worth sharing?
I need to refine this question somewhat, I know, because most Bellegrim are not very good record keepers. So
No.
the history of the realm can be kind of hard to come up with. That being said, we can definitely get a general idea about a realm by kind of thinking about their past exploits. And Pike makes an amazing showing in realm battles, and they are often a part of this Babylonian empire that we had mentioned. And this includes, I'm going to mess this up, sorry Kat, Tir Nanog? Babylon.
Tir-Nanog, I think, but I could be wrong.
Anybody's guess. It's Gaelic. Babylon and Pike kind of make up this Babylonian empire. They often kind of band together. Pike, even on its own, is a huge force at Western Wars, but that's kind of in their neck of the wood, and they typically have a very good showing there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like maybe 50 miles from them. Like, it's in their backyard. This confused me for a long time, and I think it tends to be when people come up in one realm, in this case Babylon, and then they spread for whatever reason, as happens as you get older. You move to a different town, but if you're still close enough, the realms keep having those close interactions, similar to the Battle of Pike thing we're talking about. And if you only have a few people from each realm, when they come together to events, they're like, oh, we're just this empire.
Right.
I think it's a really interesting social group that happens in Belegarth. There are a couple different empires.
And they're common where you have a lot higher population density and a lot more realms together. For instance, there's the Highlands of Chaos, which are in Idaho, and that's down in like southern Idaho, where you have a high concentration of realms. There's a few empires that have started up out of Utah. You have two separate empires in California. That's how many realms they have. They've got SoCal and NorCal, which have their own traditions and their own realms that are a part of it, and it's really cool.
I'm pretty sure the SoCal one is named Anduril, but again, not 100% on that.
They're very far away.
Yes, and this is so confusing to us, even though we've joked about making a Stygian empire for years, because we have this one very condensed realm, because all our fighters are in this same spot. Mm-hmm. But if you have 5 realms within 50 miles of each other, not everyone is going to that same spot. They'll go to whichever one is most useful for them, generally.
Right. Yeah.
Or they'll jump between the different realms. Like, on Thursday I'm going to Bob's realm. And I know so many realms. How could I not think of a real realm name there? And Friday I'll go to Armored Penguins. See? There. So you don't get this super dedicated realm loyalty that like you and I have, but you might get empire loyalty, kind of area loyalty. So
right.
It's real interesting.
It is. And again, we might be more prone to empire building if we weren't just owning more mountains, which we have a lot of.
The remoteness of Stygia shows in almost everything that we do when someone comes out of Stygia.
Yeah.
What awards has what awards has Pike won?
Well, Pike has won multiple realm battles. They give a really good showing there, again, because they're used to practicing with one another. A lot of them are members of the same units, and so they have this really good experience with teamwork, and they tend to function much better at realm battles than a lot of other realms do. Most realms are good, like you had said, at fighting themselves, like amongst themselves, but not necessarily good at coming together against an external threat.
Well, and part of it is like, who is our leadership? Who's in charge? Pike, I've noticed, doesn't seem to have that. They all just already know what they're going to do together.
They don't necessarily need somebody in charge because they all know what they're doing.
I'm a big proponent of multiple units within one realm because it keeps kind of a power balance. But if your entire realm is one unit, you have your own kind of power balance, and you have definite advantages when it comes to things like realm battles. And
Sure.
I mean, they're not all one unit, but there are definite, like, these ones tend to be the most dominant.
Right. Right. And so, yeah, I get the history speaks for itself. I have witnessed them win many realm battles. In fact, it's become almost expected in a lot of cases. That's how well they perform.
Even if they don't win the realm cloak, I expect them to
Give a good showing.
be a contender, yeah.
Yeah. No doubt.
Who are the Pike realm leaders and officials, and how are the leaders chosen?
Well, their leaders are generally chosen by vote. However, this year, with the whole COVID thing going on, they're doing a massive group project. Anybody who's wanting to be involved, wanting to contribute their voice to it, is being able to be a part of that simply because of the unorthodox year that we have been having. But yeah, normally they're chosen by a vote. Officially, Alexi and Bear are their War Council reps.
Which is a very important part of realm leadership stuff, so I very much appreciate them
Absolutely.
being involved and doing what needs doing. How would you describe Pike's realm culture? Are classes generally offered, and what units are present in their realm?
I didn't hear about any official classes being offered, but their realm culture vis-a-vis is very chill by their own words. And they hang out a lot in and out of practice. As we said, there's a lot of fighter houses out that direction. So you have this very communal presence. They're very much involved in one another's lives, not just because they're fighting together, but because a lot of them are really good friends. And the most common units there would be the Gelf, as we've already discussed, God Squad, Catalyst, Blackwater, and one member of the BOF. So they count.
Who's BOF?
I don't know. I'm not BOF.
All right, fair enough. That is everything I think of Oregon realms, honest, or Oregon units there. In Gelf, God Squad, Catalyst, and Blackwater, those are all high quality fighters when they're out there. You know, every person who's swinging a stick is someone that you have to pay attention to.
Catalyst was another one of those that just kind of came out of nowhere and became very distinguished very fast.
You can never... Catalyst is small, and I think sometimes people see them in, like, if you're newer to the West, and be like, oh, that'll be fine. I got this. They're small. And then you don't necessarily got this.
It is not fine.
And they all look so good doing it. Catalyst, for not having a cohesive look, has such a cohesive look.
Yeah, no, they definitely are very distinguished in many ways. And not to say that like any of the other ones aren't. I just like a Catalyst surprised me. It was another one of those that kind of like Vathrin. You know, you first meet it and you're like, oh, it's small. It's kind of it hasn't quite come into its prime yet. And then the next time you meet it, it's just beast mode, and you have to give it your all to even have a chance at winning.
Well, and it's fun to talk about Catalyst at least briefly here because they're not someone we get to talk about as much.
Sure. Eventually, I want to do a full unit report on them for sure.
Well, we know some people, so that would be doable.
We do.
What are Pike's plans for the future of the realm?
Well, for the most part, they're going to be focusing on recruitment, which I'm sure a lot of us are after the pandemic is over, and also bringing the realms of Washington and Oregon into greater cohesion and support. For instance, Dyer really liked the cohesion that there was for a good long while there. It is almost perceived that things have been drifting apart. And so I know a lot of people are committed to definitely bringing that back together and having more solidarity on the West Coast there.
That's as we've said, inter-realm communication can only be a good thing for the most part. So, if that happens, we've already talked about Pike's level to death here. They're going to bring up everyone around them, and the people around them are going to bring Pike up to even greater heights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Pike, you're definitely a place that I would love to visit and maybe even perhaps live near. But we're going to go on to another empire that we have discussed and are going to kind of go into more depth on, which is that of the Gelf.
My time to shine.
You may have already guessed, because Thumbs does talk about it quite a bit, that he is a part of the Gelf. And I was figuring that because the Gelf and Pike are fairly interconnected in terms of like members, that this might be a good parallel to draw between the two of them. Also, the Gelf have an empire of their own, so two empires, catchy title, I thought it worked. So for you, Thumbs, I've got some questions.
Hit me.
When was the unit founded?
Okay. So I'm going to tell a quick story before I attempt to answer that, of just getting this information. I message Zuyon, one of the most prominent Gelf. She'll come up again later in this. And I'm like, Zu, I have some questions. Can you help me out here of, like, history? And she goes, oh, just look at our history file that we keep on our page. You'll find it there. And then she went and read the history file herself and reached out to me and be like, I am so sorry. That is not... Oh, our record keeping is bad. So... if some of my answers are a little vague here, understand why.
Right.
We don't actually know for sure when the unit was founded, and our history document is written in universe. So it also involves a mad wizard creating genetically engineered or enhanced, depending on who's talking, life forms, and doesn't give the greatest of details. But we trace a lot of our stuff down to Kargos, who is our king/emperor. I'm not sure how he got elected. I've asked a couple of times, and they're just like, he's our king.
If you're going to just declare somebody king, though, Kargos is a good bet.
He's such a nice man. I love Kargos so much. And he's very reliable at sending presents on Pokemon Go. But he started in roughly 1995, 1996, so he's been around several years longer than you and I have.
Yeah.
And then the big expansion of the Empire happened at Chaos Wars 8.
Now, this was like just before I started going to Chaos Wars. My first Chaos Wars was 9. And at that point, when I interacted with the Gelf, it seemed as though they had been a very established, very large unit for quite a while. So it actually surprised me quite a bit to find out that their big expansion only happened a year before I encountered them for the first time.
There had been a few Gelf that had been there for a while, like founders at that point. But when they came out, when they decided that they were going to become the Empire, the Gelfin Empire, they did it in force.
Oh yeah, it seems to have been quite effective. So what realms have members of your unit?
Some of this has gotten really expanded just because people have moved on. They might live in places without realms or anything like that. But I mean, we have Corion, we have Ebonhold, we have Wrath, we have Pike, we have Babylon, we have Eridua, Stygia, Lara, Talinor, Andor, Aquilonia. Some of those realms don't exist anymore, but they had heavy Gelf presence at the time.
So basically the whole western half of the United States.
I don't think we currently have anyone in California, but just because the people that we did have in California recently moved.
Fair enough.
But I mean, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Washington, Oregon, Arizona, I think New Mexico, someone lives there. I don't know if there's even practices there right now, but there's Gelf. If you are in the West, there is a good chance that there is a Gelf not terribly far from you.
Is that a promise or a threat?
Take your pick.
All right. So in the whole of the unit, how many people, both fighters and non-combatants, do you have? In addition, what is the average event attendance, and which events are the most important to the Gelf?
So we have somewhere around 80 members all told, but I'm going to say there is a definite difference between active and inactive members.
Okay.
Because people can quit, but I think there's only ever been like one or two people who quit the Gelf, who are no longer members. They may have retired from the sport, but still are considered Gelf. Being Gelf is much more than just being on the field for us. You know, Zuyan, who I mentioned for this, hasn't been active in the sport, like, you know, going to events in several years, but she's still an extremely active Gelf. But we have like 80 members told. We probably have at least 30 members who have voting rights, which means that they have been to a big Gelf event in the last 4-5 years, something like that.
Nice.
I think it might just be 3. It got confusing this year because we didn't have any events, so we had to decide what that meant. An average event attendance, though, is like a good 12 people. There is plenty of events in the West that have much smaller. Chaos Wars tends to have much larger. And especially since we have members who are Gelf who are also EBF or who are also God Squad, the numbers can get pretty large.
Now, sometimes not all those Gelf are fighting on the same side, though, right?
Nope. We have some people who don't fight with the Gelf anymore, or don't fight with the Gelf at all, but who are still very active Gelf. Adarian, for example, is a Gelf who doesn't tend to fight with Gelf, but he is super active in our nightlife and making Gelf culture better. So he is 100% a Gelf.
I love that guy.
Adarian is so good. He is the tallest gnome in existence.
You know, I asked him one time, I was like, so what's your race? And he was like, I'm a gnome. And I was like, you're awfully tall for a gnome. And he was like, dude, we're playing make-believe. I can be whatever I want. Like, fair enough,
I
man.
think that's
Fair
just
enough.
his favorite joke. Oh, he's so lovely. And we did a Pokemon-themed pub once, and he dressed up as a junior trainer wearing shorts and just went around the whole day hanging out with people and occasionally spouting off things that, like, the trainer would say.
Oh, that's funny.
So, to this day, he'll just pop up and be like, I like shorts!
So tell me about some other prominent members of the Gelf.
Dop is the heart and soul of our, of our event, of our group. And it would probably kill him that I said that, but he is... We have had people, including myself, who thought Dop was the leader, and then found out later that he wasn't, and he was kind of horrified at that idea.
He just has boss energy, you know? Like, I mean, I knew the very first Chaos Wars I went to that he was in charge. I had never met the man, but just the way he carried himself and the way people deferred to him, I knew he was big business.
Daddy Dop. We have Cargos, who we've already mentioned. We have Da Wraith, who is one of the sweetest people I've ever known, and is just a killer archer. Archery is big in the Gelf. Zuyan, who I've already mentioned, almost wrote the rules for archery. Like, she was heavily involved with how they're written out. She is an absolute beast. We have Aphex, who does DJing all of the time. He does DJing for, like, live at events, and he has done, some just, like, shows online as much as possible in this last year.
And I've enjoyed his stuff, too. Now remember when I was talking about being an old crotchety dude that didn't want to move past hand drums, Sarah broke me into it, but, I heard Aphex, and I was like, nah, this is pretty okay. I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I'm cool with this. We have the brothers Paksha and Catabus, and I mean, we have talked about them so many times on this podcast. They are
respectively just stellar fighters.
Oh, and both of them. And you can, if you watch them fight, it's like what we've mentioned with Katetsu and Toto. You can see how their skill came from just beating each other up constantly. Because they have very different styles, but they're just designed to fight each other.
And they also work for fighting everybody else, too.
Oh, yeah. But it's one of those, if you have a set partner that you're fighting constantly, you pick up some amazing skills.
Absolutely.
Dyer, who we have already mentioned here.
She's pretty involved in the Gelf, too, right?
She's pretty active. She was, I think, one of the first recruits we picked up. She came in before I did. Once we started recruiting again, because we, like the Dark Angels, went through a period where we weren't really taking in new people. Mm-hmm. And she was just active. She was, in the same way with Pike, she proved that she belonged there from the very beginning.
My hero.
And I wasn't Gelf yet at the time, but I saw some of it, and she was one of the people that made me go, oh, maybe I could do that. We have Slate, who came in, we've already talked about him, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but he came in the same time that I did, on those same levels. We have Sin and Naga, who came in at the same time I did, and I feel very close to those three as well, and 4 if we include Grizzly, who's not as active in the sport but is very active in Stygia. They are a very close core group for me that I just love to death.
I can't blame you. I know Sin and Naga pretty well, and they are also stellar individuals. Naga is another one of those people that it's almost like she lays on hands. You know, she can just bring a peace to the room. She has a way of listening. I don't know. Like she is just a very cool person. I'm a huge fan of Naga, and I can't say too many I can't say enough positive things about Sin. That's how I meant to phrase it.
Very different sentence there.
Yes. No, Sin is outstanding. The very first event that I met her at, I knew that we were going to be friends just because she just has such cool energy. And but in that same token, you know, don't mess with her. Like she is absolutely nitroglycerin. Very, very, like, it's like sparkly, like nitroglycerin that has like glitter on the bottle, but don't let that glitter fool you because it's still nitroglycerin.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Sin and Naga do a yearly consent class at Chaos Wars.
Oh, nice.
Like, that is mind-blowing. That, I mean, not that it's a thing that exists that's mind-blowing, but just that they thought of doing that, and they take the time to do that, and they do the research. I've watched them prepare for that class every year. They have to work hard. And what a brilliant thing to bring into the culture.
Oh, absolutely. Some real moral lessons to mix in with our just sheer nerdery.
And it's such a serious subject, but in such a calm, friendly way of doing it, too. Of, like, you know, the definitions of consent and, like, how we talk about it has changed a lot in the last decade.
Absolutely.
And so but we don't have a great place to teach that in society. So let's make a place to teach that. It is just chef's kiss. It is just perfect.
It was brilliant. Now, before we move on to the next question, Thumbs, I don't want you to do yourself a discredit because I noticed that your name was missing from this list of prominent Gelf members.
And I promise you, I teased the person that wrote this out relentlessly about that. Not that I'd be like, I'm one of the best of the unit, but just... like, oh, I see how it is.
Well, let me just nerd out about Thumbs real quick. He is another one of those quality individuals. I came up with him in the sport. You know, he's always been involved. He's always wanted to, like, be doing something to be making things better, whether it was volunteering or taking on responsibilities. He's been a fantastic force here in Stygia, and he's taken that to the wider realm. I know that he's respected in the Weiner community. I know that he's respected in the Gelf because they talk about him all the time. We had him as our realm leader here.
About me.
We had him as our realm leader here for quite a while, and he did a very good job. He probably one of the longest standing realm leaders we've had, just simply because, you know, he was good at it. So I figured he wasn't going to talk about himself, so I wanted to talk about him a little bit.
Well, I love you too. That actually lets me kind of bring in possibly the best piece of advice I can give a Belegarth is, fight to make things better, and that's important. You are going to make mistakes while you do that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to, but I could list my mistakes just nonstop. But what's important is learning from those mistakes and just making sure to do better next time.
And having the accountability to recognize when you have not lived up to your expectations.
And be like, well, I messed that up, and I don't get to forget it, but I also don't get to, like,
wallow
torture
in it.
myself. Yes, wallow is the perfect word.
Yeah, no, we all have setbacks. We all have mistakes and accidents that happen in our lives, but, you know, it's what's going forward that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So, does your unit sponsor an event?
Not officially, but we tend to be pretty heavily involved in Western Wars, and DOP runs Chaos Wars. Chaos Wars is DOP's.
He's tried to retire so many times, but nobody can do it as well as DOP.
And he's talked about selling it to someone else, basically. And the people who talk about buying it from him, taking over full-time, tend to be Gelf as well. So, like, Chaos Wars isn't ours, but it's sort of ours.
You're heavily involved.
We have had years where we haven't really been able to go for the banner because there's no one to do volunteer points because all of us are running things.
Sure.
And, like, event heads can't get volunteer points because it would break the system.
Yeah.
Like,
A little bit of nepotism there.
so we are so involved with Chaos Wars. I mean, we put our camp in the dead center of Chaos Wars on purpose.
And y'all's camp is like really open too. Like I've been in a lot of camps that are more constrictive. You've only got like maybe one or two entrances, but like Gelf Camp has a lot of entrances and everything's very open and spread out. It's very peaceful.
We have 3 big ones. We spread it so there are huge spaces, and not just for like so people can find us, but we need space to play washers or
Sure.
for our huge tent or all of these things. We always have a big fireplace. It is all about inclusivity, I think.
So again, you may not necessarily sponsor an event, but you are definitely a positive contribution to any event that you're at.
I hope so, at least. That's, yeah.
So let's talk about the history of the unit. Are there any great tales of the past you feel worth sharing?
So we sent this, Zuyan wrote this out, and I love you, Zuyan. But all we got back for this section was cake formation.
With like an exclamation point.
Yes. So the cake formation, I have never been lucky enough to do cake formation, which is an endless tragedy to me. And it is literally taking cake out onto the field with us. It is some top level shenanigans.
That's like horde level shenanigans right there.
And yeah, I hung out with Gord once and we played. I hung out with Horde, not Gord, Horde once, and we played Duck Duck Goose. But I would much rather sit down and just eat a bite of cake first.
Let them eat cake.
Naga and Sin one year, they were the only Gelf at an event, so they decided they were going to Gelf it proper, and they brought cupcakes out onto the field. And I mean, there's pictures of me just eating a cookie while fighting someone, so obviously I have found my home.
Yeah, evidently.
Other great one that we do is night meets are a huge thing for us, which is just in the middle of the night when the party is starting to lag a little bit, bring out a barbecue and just make food.
Meat.
We once at a Stygia event ended up with way more hot dogs than we knew what to do with, so we just fed the whole event hot dogs.
Nice.
We another day we did burgers. Dop is all about this, just popping up and meat. Here, I made these. But we also have plenty of vegetarian Gelf, so even though it's still night meats, sometimes night meats might involve like portobello mushrooms or veggie burgers. Like, it's very carnivorous, but we have been pretty open with the fact of expanding beyond that.
Sure, sure. Well, I have a story of the Gelf to tell too.
Uh-huh.
And I know I've probably mentioned this in the past, but it is one of my very favorite stories to tell, so if you'll indulge me a moment.
Indulge away, my dear boy.
It was Chaos 9. I was but a wee fighter, new to the ways of the field. I was a conscript of the Uruk-hai at that time, and as far as I knew, the Uruk-hai and the Gelf were allied. They had this whole kind of Western alliance going on, and there was a big chance that one or the other might take the title, that coveted Chaos Wars banner. Now, one night I was walking through the field, and I saw a large congregation of people out there, and I strayed closer. I'm not sure if they knew I was there, and I heard them whispering. And one of the things I heard was, if it comes down to it, Numenor takes the banner. Now, Numenor is a group from out east that had come west rather in force to kind of challenge the Western Alliance. Now, but the Uruk-hai were an up-and-coming force. They were not that old at that point, and so these kind of older units conspired against the Uruk-hai. Well, I raced back to camp, bursted into my unit leader's tent, and conveyed all of that I possibly knew to him. Over the next several days, every time a unit battle was called, we simply sprinted straight into the Gelf, with no regard for whether or not we won. We knew we weren't going to. There was a pact against us, but we were certainly going to make the Gelf hurt for their betrayal. And so in my mind, for the longest time, betrayal and Gelf were synonymous, but I was wrong.
I hope so. I mean...
Every other experience I've had with the Gelf has been fantastic. As we've been going off this list, I'm like, yeah, Naga, we live together. I love that gal. Dyer, she's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I love that gal. Dar Wraith, I knew from the very moment that we met each other we were going to be pals, because he's just...
Such a gentleman.
Oh, I love Dar Wraith. So again, obviously, I've gotten over my bias, my intrinsic bias toward the Gelf. But I still like telling that story because it's fun.
This is like the only time that we would tell the story of the time this unit went, but like betrayal in one of these as our like, what's great stories about this unit?
If only to show the exact opposite side, because everything else we've been saying about the Gelf is like, you guys are fantastic, you're involved, you're amazing, but I had to bring up, the betrayal.
Well, and I like it because, I mean, it has almost reached the point of prose in your retellings over the years.
I'm getting good at it. I'm going to be able to tell it like an epic at some point. So speaking of these cool stories and everything, has your unit received any cool awards?
Since Chaos tends to be the one that we're active at that has awards, most of our prizes come from Chaos Wars. We have won the banner a few times, and even if we don't win the banner, we tend to place pretty high.
Not just because of your field presence, but also because of the amount of volunteer work you do.
Mm-hmm. And as I said, we usually have at least one Gelf who is event running things, so they don't get points.
Right.
So I not to brag, but to brag, like, we are active and stuff.
And good at what you do.
Mm-hmm. And we have won the unit banner a few times as well.
Nice.
Which is purely a combat thing, but still super fun, super good to get.
A feather to put in your cap.
I loved wandering around wearing that for like an hour one time.
I would say heresy, but yeah, obviously heresy.
It's technically the unit cloak, but I mean, banner, cloak, same thing.
Yeah, it's a cool banner. So who are your unit leaders and officials?
Kargos is our king, or our emperor. I've heard both. And I, again, am not 100% sure why, because I don't think Cargo wants to be, but he is our eternal monarch. That makes it sound bad, I'm sorry. Kargos is very good at what he does. I just have never been 100% He's like our, moral center in a lot of ways.
I can see it.
And then we tend to have 5 senators. The senators have 2-year periods, and they just deal with whatever needs going. Right now we have Atan, we have Waif, we have Benoit, we have Paksha, and we have Niobe, which is a great list of senators.
Yeah, I recognize several of those names.
Oh man, if I could just go off on every Gelf that I love, this podcast would be like 6 hours long, and I'd still be missing people. So
we'd be here a while.
If I do not mention you here, I've got such deep affection for everyone we're talking about.
We had to pick something. That was the thing with both. Like, I was talking to Dyer about the Pike information, and she was like, I'm just having such a hard time not writing everybody down. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I absolutely get that. And it's not an insult to those who haven't gotten written down. It's just a matter of, there does need to be some sort of concise list, and these were the ones that made the cut. When
we do Stygia, someday we're gonna have the exact same problem.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna be able to name off everybody in Stygia. I mean, we're not the biggest realm, but there's a few of us.
Big enough.
Yeah, big enough that we cannot name everybody. How would you describe your unit culture?
Our unit culture is in some ways one of the most rounded cultures I have seen of units. And I don't mean that as an insult towards any unit, but for example, the EBF is a very combat-focused unit. That is their strongest skill. The Juggernauts have a lot of things, but one of their biggest skills is setting up a really great camp setup. That is one of their specialties. We have great fighters. We have our Paksha, we have our Catabus, we have, all of the people we've talked about. But we also have people who set up just an amazing camp life. There is always someone there playing washers. We have the camp tent, the nap tent, just beautifully designed to be perfect for passing out for a person or two.
Now tell us about the nap tent a little bit. This sounds intriguing.
The nap tent is literally just one of those shade tents. It's not a full tent, but just the kind of 2-wall kind of setup. And then we have 10 pillows that are all pretty comfortable, that all have the Gelf snake put on them, and we have some blankets over there. And it is, if you ever need a lie down, and you don't have to be Gelf to do this, you just have to be...
I've used it, yeah.
You have to be welcome in Gelf camp, and you just generally have to be an okay person to do that, so it's not terribly difficult. If you need to go have a lie down and no one's using the nap tent, you go use the nap tent. it's important. We have a nice big fire. We have so many chairs that we have a chair graveyard. We wreck more chairs in a week than most units just have chairs around their fire to make sure that there's always a place for people to sit. Our kitchen is second to none as far as I'm concerned.
That is absolutely true. I was one of the events that I was a mercenary for, and I was going to represent the Guelph as a mercenary there. I was a part of the Guelph meal plan, and oh my gosh, that was
So good.
that was enjoyable. Yeah.
So, I mean, we have people who their focus is on everything. I think of us more as a social club than anything else, because we take in people from all walks of life who have bonded over this thing of being Guelph. And I mean, like, I talk to Guelph in some cases more since the pandemic started than I did before, just because we made sure we had lines of communication open early and often. We have a twice weekly Zoom meeting, and we don't have lots of people, but there's days where there's like 15 people hanging out on that meeting, and then there's days that there's just like 3 of us, but it's always just so nice. We're so... It's one of the things I love about Stygia too, and it's probably why I was drawn to the Guelph. It is a bunch of people who are so genuinely happy to see each other.
I dig that. And you can feel it too. Anytime I'm in Guelph camp, I'm like, wow, these folks really like hanging out together. Mm-hmm. And that creates a nice energy. It's a good place to be. Finally, what are the future plans for the Guelph?
The 2 plans listed are... they almost feel like polar opposites, but they're not. It's to maintain chaos and come up with a more cohesive system of like records and bylaws and rules. And what it is we don't want to lose any of our flavor of what is Guelph. We want to expand our flavor of what is Guelph. We are bringing new people who are perfect for us. I'm so excited about all of it. But we also are realizing that, as I said before, that there was that period of time where we weren't bringing in new people. I was one of the earlier generations of new recruitment. We are realizing that we need to have, the stuff that everyone knows written down. Because the old guard, for various reasons, aren't always able to be active, like it's true with any unit.
And eventually, there's going to be a new old guard that doesn't necessarily know the same stories as the old guard did.
Yeah, it blows me away to realize that I'm kind of at the mid-guard stage at this point. Like, because I've been at Guelph for like 5 years now.
Yeah, we're middle-aged as fighters go.
Oh boy. So that really threw me. And I don't always know all of this stuff. Or it's stuff that was just kind of understood. Or maybe things that culturally in Belegarth weren't considered as necessary as we consider them today.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of work on disorganized organization. We still want to be this big chaotic club. But we want to be a big chaotic club that, we don't have to re-educate ourselves on what the basic rules are for, like, joining every couple of years.
Well, that's fair. And then also being able to know what happened, you say, in the past, the different struggles that were overcome, lessons that were learned. Those are all good things to know, too, so people don't have to go through the process again.
Now, I've been having dreams about Guelph Camp. I'm just going to go think about that when we're done recording.
I've been dreaming about Knife Alley, too. That's the Dark Angel camp, by the way. So yeah, I absolutely feel you there, bro. We're all missing our wargaming, no doubt. So today, we've covered 2 Western empires. The first one is that of Pike, and their involvement in the Babylonian Empire, and just the sheer quantity of quality individuals that Pike produces. And the second was the Empire of the Guelph, who have been absolutely instrumental in the development of the sport and of our most beloved events like Chaos Wars. And between these two, we have the 2 Western empires. Now, as we come to the end here, I need to remind you that if you're looking for new ways or other ways to connect with the art of wargaming, we have an Instagram and a Facebook where you are able to see the memes that I post. I'm getting quite good at it, by the way.
You're posting a lot of memes lately, too.
Yeah.
So.
I'm not quite a meme lord, maybe a meme marquee at this point, but I'm getting there. So yeah, come see the funny and historical memes that we like to post. If you've got questions, critiques, criticisms, concerns, you can email us at artofwargamingpodcast@gmail.com. And then also, if you're looking for other stuff to listen to, we have the other wonderful shows on the Earworm Network.
Yeah, you can find all of the stuff we were talking about and as well as us at earworm.com. That is EARVVYRM.com. You can also find our website at taowargaming.com. And yeah, I guess that's our stuff.
Yeah, that's the show for today. We thank you for tuning in and listening about these two absolute paragons of Belegarth culture, and we hope you'll tune in next week where I start the new unit on the management of savagery.
Real quick before we take off, I just want to say, because I'm taking my break as we talked about, thank you so much for everyone who listens to us, like on a personal level as well as just a podcast level. The interaction that we've had here, this podcast has been so fun for me, so I so much appreciate that you guys listen and encourage us and me personally.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful to have your support and thumbs. We will miss you while you are gone on your sabbatical, but we look forward to your return.
Again, I love you too, buddy.
So for this episode, it's been Yaga Malark,
And I'm Thumbs.
signing off.